Great to have you. So tell me, first of all, what's the surge in demand look like?
Yeah, so we're seeing an incredible surge in demand right now in the last 2 months. Number of customer signups has more than tripled. I wish it was under different circumstances, but the fact is that remote work seems to be going mainstream now. And I think companies are having to adapt to this new normal. And we've heard from several companies that have thanked us for providing a tool like this because they frankly don't know if they'd be in business right now without it.
Now, the concern, I think, from a lot of people is a kind of big brother overlord, always watching, getting the job done and looking busy, two different things. So do companies have enough intelligence about how people normally get work done to accurately measure productivity at home?
Yeah, well, I think these are some additional tools that companies now are getting smart about looking for in a remote work environment. And I want to say that employee privacy is very important to us. We lead with transparency. So we're very transparent about how the software works. And we feel it's important for employees to know not just how it works and when it's working, but that they're in control. It's essentially a time tracking app. So they download it and they decide when to start the time tracker and when to stop the time tracker. And they have access to all the same data that their employer does. We really think this is a two-way street where there are benefits for both the employer and the employee. And we've heard from several employees that they're appreciative of this software because now with everything they have that they're juggling, with kids being at home and having to deal with e-learning, they have so much going on. They don't have to worry about the boss checking in with them regularly anymore because now they can show that they are working and they're being productive.
So either from your data that you can see or anecdotally what you're hearing from customers, how have work patterns changed, especially given what you just mentioned, a lot of parents having to not only work but sort of keep the kids on task with school?
Yeah, and I think the proof of work aspect is just one area that our software covers. There's really many different data points to it. I think your top performers are your top performers within the company regardless. And this software is just more so there to give some additional insights. But we do a lot more than just proof of work. We have project budgets. We automate timesheets. We have pay rates in here. We even have item priorities for tasks, which is something we discovered was a really big pain point for companies work remotely, is making sure they know that their employees are aware of what they should be working on and when they should be working on it.
So, Jared, I know you've seen a big increase in demand for your products and more companies sign on to use it. How much does the service cost, and how many of those new companies do you expect to stick around even after all of these economic reopenings start to take place and workers begin to get phased back into offices?
Yeah, so it starts at $7 per user per month and goes up to $20 for the highest grade plan. And we really see that. I think this is the new normal. I think companies are going to be working remotely long after this pandemic. This was a trend that had started 8-10 years ago. We really feel like we were ahead of the curve on this because not only did we notice the trend, our entire company has worked remotely from day one. So I think there are huge competitive advantages to companies working remotely. And you're seeing things in the news now like Twitter extending their work from home policy permanently, where anybody at Twitter now can just continue to work from home even after this is over. This is the new normal. This isn't just a temporary period that we're in.
Although, Jared, I wonder, crazy hypothetical, if a vaccine got announced today and we had massive doses given around the world starting immediately, how much of this would really be unwound?
Well, I think what we're hoping for, a lot of the other aspects of our software, which has to do with automation, is going to make this have staying power. This is software that does more than just proof of work. This helps you automate a lot of those back-end chores that you were having to do. We think of it as workforce management software, not just remote proof of work software.
Do we think that there's something that gets lost as an employee or a team member when you are where you're essentially on a moon base, right? We're all working remotely. I'm doing it right now. I imagine you are too. But I wonder what happens to the connectivity between employees over time and whether that's a harmful effect.
Well, I think you're definitely touching on something important here because in a remote environment, the connectivity is much harder to have with your employees. That's easier to do in an office setting. So you need to look for ways to increase that communication. And you also need to safeguard around not falling into bad traps of communication. And that goes back to managers having to do frequent check-ins just to get a pulse on what their workforce is doing and when people are working. people may not be working the traditional 9 to 5 hours right now because of all these things we're discussing with juggling your personal life with your work life. And what you don't need on top of all of that stress is having the boss check in with you regularly. So this is going to lead to better communication around the things that you should be communicating about, and not just check-ins happening frequently throughout the day. So I think it really helps in that regard a lot.
So Jared, how are you keeping all of this data safe right now at a time where there is so much focus on privacy and security and some of the impacts we've seen from hackers and things like Zoom bombing?
Yeah, well, we take protecting this data very seriously. We have several safeguards in place, and we're working every day to improve those safeguards. But I don't want that to cloud the benefits overall of the software for both the employer and the employee, because I think this is really beneficial stuff to be using in a remote work environment.
And Jared, finally, do you expect this type of software to become standard in productivity platforms? We're seeing kind of battles raging between the Slacks, the Teams, Salesforce's platform, et cetera. How deep is your integration into those sorts of platforms? Do you think it'll have to get deeper? Do you think you're going to have to end up competing with the platforms?
Well, we integrate with over 40 different platforms, and I don't see us competing with them, but more so, like you're saying, collaborating with them, integrating with them. We do several different partnerships with some of those larger companies, and that's only going to increase for us. That's a major focus. And as we've looked at these pain points that the remote workforce is having, we've noticed those same pain points, they happen for field service companies like plumbing companies, construction companies, and we're pushing aggressively into those markets as well and trying to come up with solutions for them to solve the same problems.